All right, 40K enthusiasts, we are taking a look at the Dreadnought. Space Marine Dreadnoughts. Is there a more iconic unit? Maybe Land Raiders, maybe Terminators. And if you've been following my podcasts or down there underneath this video, the link to my blog, checking out my Space Marine stuff, you know that I love playing Vindicators, Land Raiders, Terminators, Dreadnoughts, and Assault Marines. My Brotherhood of the Sword, the Fritz Templars, my Black Templars, incorporate all of these units. So much so, it's heresy, but it's bled over to my Berserkers of Scalathrax. There's a lot of similarity in there. And with the Dreadnought, certainly there's a lot of different ways to configure it, a lot of different war gear options. If you are looking to run a specific list, you're like, Fritz, I want to throw down the maximum amount of Dreadnoughts, or I want to do Dread Pods and do something like that, that's a separate, kind of completely separate build on there. My focus on Dreadnoughts, and in this podcast vlog, is using it as a reactionary unit. This is how I use it. This is how I've had success. Certainly not the only success. Again, a lot of ways. But maybe this can be a starting point for you. You're out here on YouTube trying to check out Space Marine stuff, trying to check out Dreadnoughts. You're listening to this guy, Fritz. You're thinking about evolving your Space Marine collection. This is why I believe that if you are building out your Space Marines, you can benefit. There's really two units that, unless you're playing a 100% wacky theme like Black Templar Horde Assault or something like that, Thunderfire Cannons and Dreadnoughts, I believe, for the points, have a lot of opportunity, a lot of variety. So the foundation of this is active versus passive, and this is an important 40K concept. It's a wargaming concept, usable with any system, but in 40K, more than anything, it is vital, because you are up against a you go, I go system. I do my stuff, you wait, then you do your stuff, I wait, and we're locked into a finite number of game turns. So being active versus passive is key. I'm just going to cover a little bit on this. Certainly the active versus passive is up on the archive, and that alone is worth the price of admission, I feel, if you're getting started in 40K. Active means, as a player, you look at your units on the table, and what your opponent does is irrelevant. You say, okay, this Land Raider is going to go right into the heart of my opponent and release the Terminators. The Assault Marines are going to travel up behind it and jump over to here. Razorbacks are going to move to midfield, lay down some firepower on there. You have a plan for every single unit, and you execute it on the tabletop. What causes this to happen is your opponent now has to react to what you're doing. They might want to go out and capture certain objectives, get certain terrain pieces to give an advantage, or maybe get certain models out of their deployment zone. But if everything is working and you are imposing your will on them, so to speak, they have to react. They're always going to be a step behind. That's why, as a 40K player, you don't want to react. I don't want to wait and say, okay, I'll wait and see what Fritz does. Okay, he sends out the Land Raider and the Terminators. Okay, I'll counter here. All right, his Assault Marines are moving out there. Then I'll take my bikes and move them out there. You are reacting to what I'm doing. And when I shift, I'm going to be one step ahead of you. It's an important foundation. Okay, certain things break that rule. I mean, in that vlog, active versus passive, I'm like, guys, this is the law. This is what we're laying down. And now I'm saying with Dreadnoughts, toss that all aside. I believe Dreadnoughts, there are certain units in the game and certain key units in 40K that you want to be passive. You want to react to something, because ultimately, even if you have an amazing game plan, which we're going to have, you don't know 100% what the opponent's going to do. If you play my Berserkers of Scalathrax, I will play up to a certain point where I have tactics, I have plans, I'm working things through. And then all of a sudden I have to go for personal glory. And you're like, look, Fritz is never going to charge those 10 Berserkers into my Hive Tyrant, because he's just going to get chopped down. But then what's going on in my mind is, imagine the glory to Khorne. If I run up there and I take out that Hive Tyrant, I will do that. And then I charge. So you try to force your opponent into a certain plan, but you can never fully anticipate what they're going to do. It's nice to have a reactive unit for that. Not passive, but reactive. So if I'm going to have a reactive unit, I want criteria in my army. I want that unit to not cost a lot in points. I want it to be able to have some shooting ability. I want it to be able to have some okay mobility. I want it to have good assault and I want it to have good wounds. Now, look, I'd like, maximum on everything, but that's not going to happen. There is a balance. I believe the Dread fills that. So I use the Dreadnought in two ways. In my two examples of how this is a reactive thing. With my Grey Knights, I have Land Raiders in the back, I have Terminators in the back, I try and shoot you with las cannons at long range, get you to close to the midfield, and my Grey Knight podcasts are up there in the archive. All my videos and podcasts are put into playlists. We're doing it right. We're doing it better this time. Everything is there. So if you want 40K, you can go into the playlist. You can find Grey Knights. The strategy behind my Grey Knights is to have you come to the midfield to close the distance so you can get the maximum volume of dice. And then I just charge forward for glory, leveraging Storm Bolters and running you over with Land Raiders and stuff like that on there. The Dreads, I have Dreads with las cannons and the Dreadnought close combat arm to lay down some long-range firepower. Now, what I don't want to have happen is my opponent dropping in a couple of surprises into my deployment zone. Not so much deployment lockdown, but a suicide unit or some bikes moving fast. I need something that I can block and react to. Interestingly, I use Wraith Lords in a similar manner. I guess they're kind of like Dreadnoughts in the lore, right? Eldar Dreadnoughts from back in the day. So I can lay down some additional firepower with the las cannons, but if you move to break up my back line before you charge or do something, I can send off the Dread. Now, in my Black Templar, the Fritz Templars, I have everything moving forward. Everything moving forward. I take a Dread with an assault cannon because it's going to offer a little bit more at that range. It still has the close combat arm. This is the theme here because I want some shooty. Now, what exactly that'll be, you'll determine based on your army. I want some sort of assault. I don't want, full dedicated assault or full dedicated shooty because, again, it's a reactive unit. So the Dread in my Templar list, he runs forward behind the Land Raider. And he's going to, again, lay down some firepower, but then he breaks off. And where he breaks off, he reacts to what you're doing. So if you try to move in some bikes to take out the Land Raider or intercept, I don't want to stop and get my Terminators out and have the Vindicator stop because then I've paused. I've lost momentum into your deployment zone. I've given you a chance to break out on there. I'm trying to be an active player versus passive. So I'll send the Dread out. Might not beat you. If it slows you down a turn or two, great. That means I've made it into your deployment zone. Likewise, if I go into the assault, my Land Raider stops, the door opens, everybody pours out for glory on there. If there's there might be two units that I need to assault. Can't be two places at once. So take the Terminators and go after one, and the slightly weaker one, send in the Dread in that. If there's something long range, some sort of heavy support team in your back deployment zone all the way over in the corner, hopefully you've deployed it there for range support, but also as a siphoning unit. So if you have like one unit all the way over in the corner, I really can't have you laying down the hurt every single turn, but I don't want to break off my army to travel to the other side of the gaming table because then even if I take you out, which I will, I've now burnt a turn where I got to get back to the midfield. Well, send the Dread. So there are better units for what it can do, but I believe in this edition of 40K, the Dreadnought is so multi-purpose. We're building our list to be 100% focused, but the Dread with the speed, the shooty, the assault, the wounds, it is solid. It will hold out, or it will provide and buy time, even if it loses. That will not slow up the rest of your army. And in that capacity, both kind of conservative and aggressive, that is how I'm using the Dreadnought. And as a Space Marine player, this is a model I believe you should be looking at for your collection, as it will always have some sort of use. It will always have some sort of place for it.